Good evening, friends, and welcome virtually to the Catholic community of St. Thomas More. My name is Amanda Bolaños, and I am the Pastoral Associate Intern at the church, as well as a member of the Image and Likeness Committee. This event is brought to you by the Image and Likeness Committee of St. Thomas More, a ministry that yearns to deepen the Catholic understanding that all people are made in the image and likeness of God, as well as focusing on initiatives that involve racial healing and cultural diversity. I want to thank you for joining us tonight, and I extend my welcome to all, especially to those who are not Catholic, as we gather in honor and celebration of Black History Month. I'd like to start with a prayer, so if you will join me as we begin. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. This prayer is from Psalm 139. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you, friends, for joining us tonight. And now I will introduce our speakers. Tonight we are with Dolores and Lorie Clark, a mother and daughter who are part of the first Black family to reside in Carrboro, North Carolina. Dolores Hogan Clark is part of the fourth generation of the Strayhorn legacy, a family that has had 7 generations in Carrboro, North Carolina thus far. Tonight, she will be talking about her great-grandparents, Tony and Nellie, and their experiences in being the first Black family in Carrboro, North Carolina. Dolores used to be a pediatric nurse at Chapel Hill Pediatrics and at UNC Hospital. She helped organize a free evening clinic for Black children that occurred for over 15 years. Dolores also enjoys working with her seasoned peers in the community. We also have with us her daughter, Lorie, who is a part of the 5th generation of the Strayhorn legacy. Lorie will be asking Dolores questions about the Strayhorn experience as part of tonight's presentation. Lorie is a local community organizer and has worked for social justice in the Chapel Hill Carrboro community of North Carolina for more than 2 decades. As a high school specialist, the Blue Ribbon Mentor Advocate Program in the Chapel Hill Carrboro City Schools for 18 years, she provided opportunities for student growth with a focus in social justice. We are blessed and honored to be joined by Dolores and Lorie Clark tonight, and we warmly welcome them to the virtual community of St. Thomas More, and are excited to hear their stories and about their conversation regarding local history in the Chapel Hill Carrboro area. I will now turn it over to Lorie and Dolores.
Good evening and welcome to the Strayhorn property. We're in Carrboro, North Carolina, and we are actually sitting in the one-room log cabin that my great-great-grandparents built. And I'm delighted to have my mom here. She just celebrated her 87th birthday. And delighted that St. Thomas More has invited us to share our story. And so we believe that oral history and preserving your history is paramount to keeping your legacy going. And so I'm just going to have a conversation with my mom and invite you in, and I hope you enjoy it. So I want you to tell me, well, she did already. So I want you to tell me about Tony, where Tony grew up. And I know it's not far from here, but where he grew up and how he ended up in Carrboro.
My great-grandfather, Tony Strayhorn, was born in Orange County. In the 1850s, he was a slave, lived on the Strayhorn plantation, which is about 60 miles from where we live now. And As a slave, his mother had 2 children, Tony and a sister. And I don't recall, we never knew the name of his sister. However, he stayed on the plantation for a long, long time until he became an adult. And he worked hard and tried to learn things. He couldn't learn, wasn't taught to read or write. However, he was taught some other things. So in growing up, his mother was taken away from him when he was 7 years old. And he never saw her again. But her last words were, "Be a good boy, be a good, good boy." And she was taken to Hillsborough and sold as a slave to another slave owner.
So I just want, before my mom goes on, I just want to say that when I was growing up, my grandmother used to say that we had family down east. But I never really knew what that meant until several years ago when we had a reunion and we were actually connected with the Strayhorns down east and learned that some of the Strayhorns that came from the Strayhorn plantation in Hillsborough also migrated to Tennessee. So we've been able to connect with our Strayhorn relatives in the East and in Tennessee. So once Tony was, once he grew up and came here, can you tell me how he, I know we talked about, you don't know how he met Nellie, but how they ended up getting married and settling here in Carrboro.
Okay, I'm gonna backtrack and say Tony's master was Gilbert Strayhorn. That was his master. I never knew the mistress. However, when Tony was freed in 1865, I think he must have lived on the plantation for some years. And then he ventured out and met my great-grandmother, Nellie. And back then, it was hard for them, but he met my great-grandmother, Nellie. They got together, they married in 1876, and they didn't have anything when they married. But 5 years after the Civil War was ended, Tony and Nellie went without shoes. They sold vegetables and also purchased land where I live now, 30 acres of land in Carrboro. It wasn't anything here, just like a forest. So Tony cleared the forest. He built one room, a log cabin, one room. In that one room, they slept, ate, cooked, and did all of that in one room until they were able to add on. So what they did, how they made it, they, like I said, they cleared the forest, they built a log cabin, and they planted crops. He became a farmer, and they sold vegetables and milk and butter around in Carrboro to other people.
So the photo that you actually see on the screen is the house that we currently, my mom and I currently live in now. And so this photo here was taken around what time of the year?
I would say probably in the 1890s.
So this photo is in the 1890s. And can you briefly go over who might be in this, included in this photo?
Well, I'm not exactly, on the horses are my uncles Willis and After Barbie. My great-grandmother is on the right with the cow, and another family member is on the left with the cow. My great-grandfather, Tony, is the gentleman you see standing in the back with the black suit on and a hat. And his daughter is right next to him. And right next to her in the middle is a cousin. And the other lady to the right is Margie Strayhorn that Tony and Nellie's son married. And in front of her are two of her children, and in front of my grandmother are her children, my mother's siblings. Of course, the chickens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you for sharing that. And so you said that Tony moved to Carrboro and met Nellie, married Nellie. They purchased 30
30
acres
acres
of
of
land
Yes.
here in Carrboro, and we are actually recording this in the one-room log cabin. You'll be able to see photos of the log cabin later on. So tell me about life for Tony and Nellie. I know that they had two children. They had William and they had Sally. And so you talked about they were farmers. I think Tony was a brick mason. But before we go on, I'd like for you to talk about um, Tony, teaching himself to read, because that's one of the things when I think about our legacy and how sometimes how difficult it is and some of the things that I want to instill in my kids. I want to talk about his resilience and how he taught himself to read.
Okay, according to my great grandmother, I got the history from my mother, was passed on to me. Was Tony, after they built the home, they weren't, like I said before, uh, they weren't taught to read or write. So Tony had faith. So he decided, I guess, to try to help himself, teach himself to read. So what he did, he would sit on the porch, back porch, when the moon was out, by the moonlight, and he taught himself to read. In teaching himself to read, he became a visionary leader in the community. He became a minister. He became associate minister of the church we attend now, a family church. He also was one of the first founders of First Baptist Church. Well, back then it was Rock Hill Baptist, and then was changed to First Baptist. So he was a visionary leader in our community. Um, he also was very good in doing brick masonry. He built chimneys all over Carrboro for people. And he even built this home. He built this home alone, the whole house that we live in.
So he built this house basically room by room, right?
Room
So
by room.
the one log cabin, and then they would add on, as the family grew.
As the family grew, he had a daughter and a son. Then he was able to make additions to the home. So then, as his children grew up, he gave his son house next. Well, he built the house next door, and his daughter he gave property, and she and her husband, my grandfather, built their home just adjacent to the farmhouse.
So I'd like for you to talk a little bit about, like the family gatherings. You would say that, down the road or the hill, there was a farm and people would gather here and prepare for the winter and do canning and then go to Carmel Mall to
Mhm.
sell and trade. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Okay, we owned a big farm, 30 acres. We had a very big farm. I was able to work on some of the farm after I was born and became a teenager. So we raised everything. We only purchased coffee and sugar and flour from the store. Everything else was raised here on the farm. So then they even raised cotton, which they would take to the mill. And also they would have corn shuckings where some of the neighbors from out in rural areas would come and they would all gather. My grandmother, great grandmother, cook a big meal so they would have something to eat. So they shuck corn and they carried the corn to Carmel, which is not far from where we live now. And the corn was ground into corn meal. So they didn't have to purchase a lot of things because they raised everything, all the meat, the chickens and the hogs meat and all the vegetables you could eat was raised on the farm.
Now, I know you told me that you all had certain traditions and would sometimes get on me about ironing on Sunday and not being prepared. And so tell me, I know Tony passed away when you were 3 years old, right?
No, Tony passed away December 2nd, 1934.
Okay.
And I was born December 9th, 1933. So he passed away a couple of days before I turned 1 year.
Okay. And
So I actually didn't know him that well.
so then Nellie was instrumental in raising you
Yes.
and your mother.
And my
So
father.
can you talk a little bit about some of the values that she instilled in you?
Okay, some of the values she instilled in me was to, always be kind to people, always love people, and always show politeness. And, that really was, back then, it was something that was very important to our family, is being kind to everyone and loving everyone, and just being helpful, sticking together and being helpful as families.
And so I want you to just share a little more about Nellie. That, we don't know a lot about Nellie, but we do know that she lived on the Atwater plantation.
Yes. She lived on the Atwater plantation, but her master was Brian Stroud was her master. And she lived on the plantation and as a young child and grew up. And of course she had to work on the plantation. So our mother would get up early in the morning and leave her with the children to take care of the children. And so when she became, I guess, a teenager, she had to help on the farm, and she would plow. And she always said that there was she could plow and other people on the farm. So she did all the hard work, and she said that she and her mistress, they prepared barrels of food for the soldiers. So and sent the food to the soldiers. But then she was able to help out at the house where her master and mistress lived. But she lived on the plantation, I guess, until she became an adult also.
And when there's a story in our family about when the Confederate soldiers, I'm sorry, not the Confederate soldiers, the Union soldiers came to tell the slaves that they were free. And can you talk a little bit about what Nellie shared about her experience when that happened?
Okay, so Mary and her family worked in the fields a lot. So when they were in the fields working this particular day, they saw these soldiers coming up in blue suits, and she said in shiny brass buttons. And so they walked up to her family, the ones that were in the field, and asked them if they knew they were freed. And she said, no, we did not know we were free. And they said, oh, yes, you are free. You are free. And she said, everybody started jumping around in the fields and throwing the shovels and throwing the hoes and everything away, just jumping around, shouting. They were so glad to be free, 1865.
Thank you for sharing that. That's important. That's very important. So the other thing that I'd like to ask, how do you think Tony and Nellie not necessarily survived, but what drove them to be kind, to have compassion? You talk a lot about their faith. And I know that they had very difficult lives growing up, right?
Yes.
But as parents, they instilled a lot of faith and hard work in their children, and which has been passed on to later generations. So talk a little bit about what you think their work ethic was. And so Nellie lived for many years after Tony passed away, right?
Yes.
So how did she maintain this farm, like by herself? And who did she rely on? And what do you think got her through?
Well, I think what got her through and what got both of them through then was their faith in God. That was very important. Tony would get up every morning and gather his family and have prayer before they did any started their day. So they had so much faith, and Tony was, and both of them were devout Christians. They believed in helping people when they were able, and they believed in sharing. They had kindness in their hearts. They had lots of love for others, and that's how they made it.
So Tony was a brick mason and a
Yes,
farmer.
yes.
And so his daughter, Sally,
Mhm.
married a farmer who was a Barbie from Barbie's Chapel. That's another story. But I want you to talk about how he taught his grandsons to lay
Mhm.
brick and the work that they did throughout Carrboro and Chapel Hill.
Oh, so how he taught my uncles, which is my mother's sisters, how to do the work. They did brick mason work. They did plaster work, and he taught the men in the family, my mother's siblings, how to do all that, and they were able to take that on in their for their career. So he was just a good teacher.
Do you know any places in Carrboro or Chapel Hill where they've laid brick that still remains?
Okay, one place in particular in Carrboro is the Central Center.
Okay.
That's one of the places that my great grandfather had built. And Chapel Hill, my uncles Willis and Alfred Barbie, they have built so many things around the campus of the UNC campus and other parts of Chapel Hill and Carver also. So they were well known, and my great grandfather was well known. My great grandmother was well known because people had respect for them. They had a lot of respect, and that's what was important.
Is there anything else about Nellie and Tony that you would like to share? I think I may have
Well, I
a
think
few
we
more
missed,
questions.
about when neighbors would come by from the rural area, they would stop by, and we have a well in the yard still there, but we don't use it. However, people would stop by just to stop and say hello and have a conversation because they knew the Strayhorns were good people and they love people. So they would stop by on their way to Carrboro or to Chapel Hill and get a drink of water and just have a little conversation. And then they'd be headed on their way.
And so what was, and I don't know if I alluded to this before, but what was life like for you? I mean, was it difficult? I know you all were farmers. Did you have a lot of money? I mean, so, and were you all happy? Or was it hard work?
No, we didn't have a lot of money. We got money from my great grandparents from farming. That's how they made money. Now, after they were freed, and my great grandmother started, that's before she got married. She said she worked for a lawyer in Chapel Hill. She only got $5 a month, and the $5 that she received that month went to her father. So no, they didn't have a lot of money, but they, like I said, they had faith, they had love for each other. So that's how they made it.
And I know recently, since we've been cleaning out because we've had time due to COVID, we found some receipts that Tony had purchased his daughter an organ and paid, I think, $5 a month.
$5 a month, yes. My grandmother Sally, Tony's daughter, was a musician. She played the organ at church every Sunday and she taught herself how to play.
Mhm.
So she played the organ in church every Sunday. She was the pianist there, the organist. And my great grandfather was Tony. He was the superintendent. He was the associate pastor, and just a leader. And they taught Sunday school, and just a Bible scholar. He was,
Mhm.
and he
Mhm.
taught himself to read the Bible.
Mhm.
So we found
Mhm.
actually found a Bible, one of his Bibles, not long ago, and also a Bible of my grandmother Sally. My grandmother, they went to church every Sunday. They were faithful members, and she made the communion bread that they served. So they all played a big part and role in the church.
Mhm.
And my great grandfather, he played a huge role in community because he was just a community man and just a good man.
So I know you've lived in this house for many years, and you preserved it, so there are seven generations. And so the photo that you see on the screen is actually the one room log cabin, which is where we are. And my mom has, um, with the help of many people in this community, been able to preserve this land, this house, which we are so grateful for. So do you want to talk about what carrying on your grandparents' legacy and the preservation of this house means to you?
Okay, my great grandparents, Tony and Nella Strayhorn, they reminded me of the value of our whole family and the many treasures in their lives. And I was truly enlightened by the struggles and the hardship and the survival they that occurred during slavery days. I love this home, and I promised my mother that I would always live here as long as I live. So it's just an honor. I've had people to really help me. It's been hard trying to preserve it, but through faith in God, I've had the town of Carrboro have really helped me preserve it, and also Chapel Hill Preservation Society. Earning Dollar helped me a lot. Uh, very instrumental in helping me, and also, and people have been very gracious in in helping me keep things going, and I appreciate that so much. I really do.
So, what is one thing that you'd like to share with people about the value of preserving your history and about oral history? I'm so grateful that we have this opportunity for me to sit with my mom and for her to share with me, and for those of you that are on this evening, about our family's legacy. And so, um, what I've been doing lately when my mom and I have conversation is I record her, because I think that that's valuable, and I want to be able to preserve our family history. So for people that are watching, um, what do you think? What do you think they should do to preserve their family history, and why is it important?
I think it's very important to preserve family history. I have gotten together a book from the very beginning of stories that I was told that my mother passed on to me, and I have made a book, a whole book, and I'm still working on it now, of the things that she taught me and the things that I actually heard from my grandmother. She taught me when she was alive. So because she raised me in this home. So I think that when there are family gatherings at Thanksgiving, Christmas, or whenever, July 4th, uh, if families could just talk about their history and get it together and write it down, and it's very important to know, where your great grandparents, your great great grandparents came from, and even as the children are growing now, they might ask mommy, what did you do when you grew up, or whatever. If you write down everything, just when you're thinking about something, jot it down. Like I said, at family gatherings, talk about things, and your uncles and aunts and great grandparents and grandparents. Talk about family and see who has pictures or who has some information that you can gather together and you know, then when you have things like that and you go back and you can go through your book or whatever, and it's interest is history is really interesting, and I really do enjoy writing it. And but I would encourage people to please write your family history, pass it on to the next generation, then let them pass it on to the next generation. So I value that so much.
Is there anything else you want to share just about your upbringing? I have a question. I think I would like to know from you, if Tony and Nellie were alive today, what would they tell their great grandchildren about being faithful and just about life in general?
I think they would tell them about the values of the family, uh, and about having faith and how to, carry on and how to preserve or continue to preserve history. I think they would say that. And this particular photo that she's showing now, I apologize, but one of my grandchildren is missing. Her name is Nevaeh. She wasn't in this picture, but I apologize for that. She
wasn't born yet.
There she is in the corner down there.
Oh yeah,
I'm sorry. She's in the corner, but I just noticed that we were going through that earlier. I just noticed. So I have 10 grandchildren, but actually one of them is not on there. One of the oldest one is not on there, but Nevaeh is. She's the baby.
Oh yeah, she is on there.
So I have 10 grandchildren. I'm really proud of my grandchildren. I have 2 great grandchildren, Jalir and Braylon. They are 2 and 3. So I love my family so much, and just for them, I just love them. But if you could uh, just get family together, talk about things. It's a lot of it's educational and it's fun. It's a lot of fun. Uh, to me, I have enjoyed every moment of what I was taught when I was growing up, and to this day, I value everything that I was taught from my grandmother and from my mother. And, I will always treasure it as long as I'm on this earth.
And so that's interesting that you talked about, you will value what they taught you. And, you shared that Tony taught himself to read, and that Nellie probably did not have an education.
Nellie did not have any education. She couldn't read or write. So she relied on her husband, Tony, to take care of everything because she praised him for that, for just going out, sitting on the porch at night, because then, you weren't allowed to have lights in your home because different people riding on horseback, trying to see if a light was burning your house. So you weren't allowed to have lights on in your house. So that's how he taught himself, just to go and sit on the porch in the moonlight. And I know that must have been hard, but trying to, see and make, but he made it. He became, like I said earlier, he became associate pastor. He became a founder of the Rock Hill Baptist Church. He was a Mason, and he became a magistrate in Orange County. A magistrate in Orange County. And he did a lot of things in the community. And I mean, just from teaching himself, because I'm sure on the slave plantation, they weren't allowed to teach the Black children.
And I know one of my favorite stories that you shared is about Nellie only getting, is it one pair of shoes, and how they had to make their dresses. I can't imagine that, but I always find the story really very intriguing. Will you share that?
Okay, when Nella was growing up, they only had one pair of shoes a year, and she stated that her master made the shoes.
Mhm.
They had to go barefooted everywhere they went. They had to go even to church. They went barefooted. Okay, so the mistress made their clothes. So they only got they wore one dress in the winter. Then in the summer they would take off and put on another dress or take off the yarn undershirts. So, but that's what happened to them. And they had even they went to church, but they had to sit outside. They couldn't go in the church. They went to church barefooted. They had to sit outside on a bench until their mistress and master came out of church, and that happened with my great grandmother and great grandfather.
I know the other day you and I were talking about, you were wondering how they went to church. Like, did they go, did they walk or did they go in a horse and buggy? And we don't have that information, do we?
No, but I'm thinking they went in horse and buggy because they didn't no cars back then. So they went in horse and buggy, I would think. Either they would walk.
Or they would walk. Let's see, do I have any other questions? I don't know if it's time for us to entertain any questions that people might have at this time. But this has been an interesting conversation. And it's, again, it's so important to know and to understand your family's history. And so the photos on the screen, as my mom shared earlier, that is in like the early 1900s, because my grandmother is in that photo and she was a little girl. And the photo on the right is the house as it currently stands. And so I want to just acknowledge my mom for her perseverance and her dedication to make sure that this house remains in our family, and all the things that she's done to make sure that the interior for the most part and the exterior meets the standards of state registry, because it is on the state registry. I know that we've been trying to get it on the national registry. Not quite sure what happened with that. But anyway, so, when I think about Tony and Nellie, it really baffles me to know that back then he was able to purchase 30 acres of land here in Carrboro, pretty much from PTA, or now Community Works, almost all the way down to Owassa, and then back down Laurel Avenue is all the acreage that was Strayhorn land. And my mom shared that Tony's son, Will, built a house next door, right next door to the Community Works. And then Sally and her family built a house a few yards down Jones Ferry, which is a brick house. And that's where she raised her family. The one thing my mom didn't share is that Sally passed away early. And so some of the children lived in the Rock House on Jones Ferry, and some came to live here with Nellie, right?
Right, too. Yeah. And I just want to say that I have lived here most of my life, and I'm just feel so honored to know that my great grandparents worked so hard for the land and built this home, and it's just a treasure to me. And I'm just so grateful that it has remained in our family for all these years.
So do you have any parting words of wisdom about family history or what you hope your grandchildren and great-grandchildren will do to carry on this history and to preserve our home place?
Well, I hope that they would listen to the stories being told, for one
Mhm.
thing, and other families do the same thing. Uh, and like I said before, jot down things. When someone tells you about what happened years ago, jot it down and bring it together. Uh, and and enjoy, and be thankful for what your ancestors have passed on to you. I'm very grateful for it to this day. So, but we have so much. This is not all the history. There's a lot more to
Mhm.
be learned.
Mhm.
We can't tell it all right now. It's just too much. And like I said, I'm written my story, my part of what I've learned growing up in this home, uh, and all the beautiful things that happen. I'm just so grateful for that. So I just hope that other people will do the same.
Mhm.
Same. Enjoy your families. It's important.
And so I just, you shared a lot about Nellie and Tony, but your life is fascinating too. And the one thing that I always like to lift up is, your work in the community, but even just, what I value is that the stories that you share about walking to school and about how rich Carrboro was and how much family there was, and you would stop at different places in the neighborhood
Mhm.
and eat food or see people. And so just talk a little bit about, you walking to school from here, um, and what school was like. I know you graduated from Lincoln High.
I did. Growing up, it was all right. The neighbors, we were on the black family in Carrboro for a long, long time, but we had white neighbors, and the neighbors that we had, they were good people. I must say they were good people. We were like family, living across the street and adjacent to our home. Uh, it was like family. They never ridiculed us, and they were always loving and shared things and together. Then we had my growing up was a little bit hard in the beginning because my school was so far away, about a
Mhm.
mile. I went to a school called Orange County Training School, which is right off Church Street in Chapel Hill, until around the 11th grade, and then graduated 12th grade. But it was converted to Lincoln High at that time.
Mhm.
So, but we had to walk to school in the rain, whatever, sleep, whatever it was. We couldn't ride a bus because
Mhm.
it was segregated.
Mhm.
School was hard because we didn't have things like the white schools had.
Mhm.
We had old books with no backs, pages going out of the books. But we had good teachers and we survived. And um, our teachers, they saw to it that we had a very good education,
Mhm.
which I'm grateful for.
Mhm.
But it was very hard having to walk to school and walk home from school every day. And right, not even about a half a block from my home, this home I'm in now, was a school that I could not attend.
Mhm.
Um, I had to continue to go to Orange County Training School and then graduate from Lincoln
Mhm.
High. But like I said, it was hard, but we survived. There were hard times, but like I said, through faith, we survived.
Mhm. And so I know that your mother had several siblings, and those siblings really only had one child each.
Yeah.
And so, you didn't have any siblings, but
Mhm.
your cousins were like your siblings. Can you talk a little bit about what life was like for you all and how you played? You shared a lot with me about how you all relied on each other and took care of each other. And I think that's important family values.
Yeah, it was like you just said, most of my cousins just would be either a boy or a girl in each one of my mother's siblings. Um, so, but we were family. We were good family. We played together because everybody was right here, either next door, a couple of yards of feet from here. And so we played, you know, we had games. We didn't have things like movies or television. I don't think we even had a radio. So we did things to entertain ourselves, playing games in the yard and just, you know, maybe eventually when we got to be teenagers, we were able to get Santa Claus bought us a bicycle. So we were able to ride our bikes. But I mean, we were happy, although we didn't have anything much, but we were happy. It was just gathering around and playing with us. And then the family across the street, families, they were white, they would come over and play with us, and we would go in, you know, to their home sometime. But we just grew up like that. But nobody, we didn't complain. We couldn't complain because wasn't anything. It wouldn't happen, you know, for us to have things that the white children had.
So is one more story that I want you to share that is, you know, very dear to my heart. And I just can never imagine it. But a lot of people probably don't know that you were inflicted with polio. And so I just want you to share that day, how you went to school and how you came home, and how your cousins helped you.
Yeah. Well, at the age of 16, I was a junior in high school, and I woke up one morning. I didn't feel well, but I was able to get up, get dressed anyway. And as I walked out of the house to get on, back then I was able to ride the bus, which had just happened about maybe a year before that. Uh, I couldn't get up the steps on the bus. So my cousin, we were all very close to my cousin now. So he helped me get on the bus and went to school, and I couldn't hardly make it in school. My legs were very, very weak. And but I made it through the day, and I had to be helped back on the bus. And then when I got home, helped in the house. So as soon as I entered the door to my home, I fell on the floor, and my mother was a nurse, so she was at work, and my granny, my great grandmother Nellie, she was here, but she was in age. She couldn't do that much. We didn't have a telephone, so nobody could call for emergency. Um, so I had to just lie there until my mother came from work about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and she, you know, she discovered that I couldn't walk. My legs had just given out, and so she they rushed me to Duke Hospital in Durham, and then they diagnosed me as having polio, and I was paralyzed all the way from waist down for over 6 or 7 months. Wasn't able to go back to school, and was in my junior year. But however, my teachers were very nice. My friends were nice. They would come and bring me homework, and so I made it. So I went back to school, I think about 6 or 7 months later, and was able to graduate with my class. So God was good. People were praying. They were really praying for my recovery. And so I made it. I made it.
And the other story that is, you know, really makes me sad is the story about your cousin Lucy, who had just gone to college. Can you talk about his accident and what happened?
So my cousin, we call him, his name was Willis Barbie Jr. He got a full scholarship to Morristown College in Morristown, Tennessee. Went out to college and was there for a couple of months. And he was a football player, got a scholarship football. So they came through Chapel Hill, and he stopped and for a while. And then his mother had prepared a meal for him and some of his friends. So about in the late evening that same day, we got a call that he had been injured. And so his father and his mother and myself and my mother and his grandmother drove to Elizabeth City, North Carolina, where he was injured. So when we got there, he was in the hospital. He had a broken neck, And he then, but he knew us when we got there, but he only lasted about 30 minutes after we got there. So he passed away, and that was very hard for all of us.
But I think what is important is, you said that he wasn't able to get the care that he should.
It was a small community hospital. So back then, they didn't have everything. Medical technology wasn't like it is today.
But did they deny him at one hospital and send him to another?
Yes.
Okay.
So he was not able to get in good care. I think he probably would survive if he had gone to a more a larger hospital.
Mm-hmm.
But this little hospital was so small, and they didn't have the equipment to really for him. So he passed away just first year college.
So I think we're almost out of time. And so I appreciate you taking this time to share our family history. And I hope you all have been engaged and have enjoyed it. And we'll elevate Black history, not just during Black History Month, but, be more cognizant about learning about your local Black history and national history. But preserving your family history is important. I'm really grateful that I still have my mom here to share these stories with me, that technology allows us to record it. And also the fact that she is working on her book. So now I would like to thank, we would like to thank St. Thomas More
thank you,
for
Thomas
this
More.
invitation to be with you this evening. We'll turn it over to Amanda, and she may have a few questions for us.
Write your story. Don't forget. Jot it down.
Thank you both so much. That was absolutely beautiful and incredible. And Dolores and Lorie, just what a witness. One of the comments, I'll just say this, says you must come back in person when the time is right, as part of your book tour, okay? But yes, that's all the time we have tonight, friends. I first would like to thank everyone for joining us as we honor and celebrate Black History Month. And thank you to Lorie and Dolores for taking the time to share your wisdom and your grace with us. It's been such a privilege to listen to you this evening. And we're very grateful for your words of wisdom, both of you. If anyone has any concerns or questions, please feel free to email me, Amanda Bolaños. I'll put my email in the Facebook comments. And don't forget to join us next week as we continue our speaker series. Next Monday, we will be joined by Principal Jared Smith, who is the principal at St. Thomas More Academy in Washington, D.C. And we're very grateful. But Dolores and Lorie, thank you again for your beautiful words and ultimately a message of hope. May everyone continue to record and tell their stories. But we wish everyone a great rest of their night. Please stay safe and know that you're in our prayers. Thank you both.
Thank you for the invitation.